What is up, everybody? We are here for the Sunday recap show, like we do every single week at 7:30 over on YouTube, recapping the Sunday games. I sense that this is going to be a slightly more somber episode of the podcast because I'm joined today by a Cowboys fan who probably has some stuff to say, and that's Curtis Hirsch. How are you doing, Curtis?
Yeah, no, it's been a great afternoon despite me dropping my drink down the stairs and having it all over the floor right 3 seconds before coming on this podcast. Yeah, I'm going to try to shake that loss off, but seems like Mike McCarthy is the anti hero. That was a really tough game for me to watch. And yeah, I'll stop now.
I what I really enjoyed is that we go live here at 7:30. At 7:23, I got a Slack message that was, "I'm gonna go take a walk around the block." Like you had to take like an anger lap
Yeah,
after watching
yeah.
that game. It was that bad, huh?
Yeah, they lost to the Arizona Cardinals. I don't even think that's possible. Is it possible to lose to the Arizona Cardinals in 2023?
First of all, producer Sean, thank you very much for the lower there. He had to vent his emotions on a walk. That's very good. But yeah, I mean, several teams have now tried. The Commanders tried to do it, the Giants tried to do it, and the Cowboys were successful at losing to the Cardinals. So I mean, good job on that, Curtis. I guess
Yeah.
I will say this about the Cardinals is that I mean they've been frisky now for 3 weeks. This idea that we thought the Cardinals were going to. I kind of made a joke last week that the 2 game opening for the Cardinals was perfect because they were frisky. They weren't just rolling over for teams, but then they lost in the second half. And so they're continuing on their perhaps march to have the number one overall pick. But now they wasn't just in the first half that they were frisky. They came out and they won against the Cowboys. The offense is looking better as we go through. James Conner over the last 2 weeks has really been outstanding and has really been effective. Um, we think they're going to get Kyler Murray back at some point. He recently said, right, he wants sooner than later to be back. I mean, it's interesting. They're still not a good team. Like they're probably not going to make the playoffs. I'd be very shocked by that. But they have been much more competitive than I thought they would be. They have a brand new offensive coordinator who, when I was trying to preview them before the season, I was like, I have no idea what to expect out of Drew Petzing. It kind of looks like, at least early returns are, that he might be a good one. And so things are looking good for the Cardinals. On the other side, though, I mean, I think what kind of worries me the most about this game is that through the first 2 weeks, the Cowboys offense, which was my big concern with Mike McCarthy coming in, the Cowboys offense didn't have to do anything. So it didn't matter. Today they had to do something and it didn't happen, Curtis.
No, it didn't. There was ridiculous penalties. The offensive line struggled. I guess did they
You
had
have
a couple of
injuries.
replacements on there, I guess, but still it's the Arizona Cardinals and you should be able to overcome that in this kind of a game situation, but the play calling in the red zone was pretty egregious as well. So they had 5 red zone trips and 6 points. Like how does that happen?
Yeah, and that's a big problem. And also I'd say like you got a good game out of Tony Pollard, right? He had what 122 yards on 23 carries. He did Tony Pollard things, averaged over 5 yards a carry. And it didn't happen for them. Could it be one of those games, like you said, they got in the red zone a lot, it didn't work? Could it just be one of those games where you're playing on the wrong side of variance? It certainly could be. But now we are 3 weeks in. I don't think we've really seen the offense be like great. We know what the defense can be, but if this team wants to compete with the top of the NFC, they need the offense to be better. That was my big concern with Mike McCarthy coming into the season. And so now I'm at least I'm a little bit wary, I suppose. I think that would be the word. I'm not going to, sell. The Cowboys are going to make the playoffs. I would be very surprised if that didn't happen, even with Trayvon Diggs and the injury that he dealt with. But I'm interested to see. They got the 49ers in Week 5. They play the Patriots next week, which they should be able to shut down that Patriots offense. And then they get the 49ers in Week 5 on Sunday night. That's going to be fascinating. I can't imagine you're feeling great right now headed into what that game could be.
We'll see. Right?
Oh, look at
One
that!
week.
The walk worked.
Yeah,
The
it did.
walk
Yeah.
was effective.
Look at that. I think you started talking, and I just you're a calming influence, I guess. Yeah. What?
No one has ever said that ever in history that I was a calming influence.
uh,
But I I do appreciate it. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see kind of where they go from here. We'll be talking about the Cowboys a lot, I assume, on the website this week, sharpfootballanalysis.com. Remember, we're going to have, just like we did for this week, we're going to have a ton of stuff to get you ready for week 4. You can get access to Rich Rebar's comprehensive preview of every game every week. You can get access to Warren Sharp's betting recommendations, and you can get the best waiver ads for this week, which could be an interesting week. There weren't a ton of injuries, but could be an interesting week from Curtis. Curtis writes that every week. You can get all of that with our all access package over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. Use code ANGLES. I believe you still get 15% off. Go and check that out. Also, if you're listening to this as a podcast, as I mentioned at the top, we do this live every Sunday at 7:30 Eastern, right after the games are over. You can come join us on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Warren Sharp, subscribe to our channel, and you get notified when we go live. We go live on Sunday nights, go live on Wednesday nights, we go live twice on Thursdays. There's a lot of live content here on the site, on the YouTube. So go check that out. Let's move on to I was going to say a sadder thing, but I guess for you it's not really that much sadder. It's just all bad. It's just all sad, and that's injuries. We had a couple. We didn't have the volume of injuries. Tucker and I talked about this last week. By the way, Tucker's Bagley not able to be here this week. That's why you're only hearing the two of us. He'll be back next week. But Tucker and I talked about it last week, or it seems like those first 2 weeks you get a big volume of injuries, and then it kind of tails off a little bit after that. I don't know why that is. Maybe just getting back into the season. I'm not sure, but that's how it generally works, at least in my mind, from writing the waiver columns for as long as I wrote them. But we do have a couple serious injuries, unfortunately, this week, and one of those is to Mike Williams, unfortunately, and it looks like a season ender, right, Curtis?
Yeah, I'm assuming no good news is coming of that one. It didn't look good. You see all the Twitter doctors mentioning that it looks like a season-long knee injury, and you can hope it's a sprain or a deep bruise, but it didn't look good. And you could see right as soon as his foot planted, it looked like he kind of buckled there. And the Chargers just can't have nice things, man. I don't know what is going on in that with that organization, but every year it seems to be something, whether it's the offense, whether it's the defense, and looks like it struck again. And we're down to Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler again.
Yeah, and it's funny the Chargers came through this one, although we'll talk about the end of that game, I guess, a little bit here later on. The Chargers came through on this one, but they lost close games in week 1 and 2. And you're right, it's like we can't have nice things. There's an alternate world where the Chargers are not snake bit, that they're 3-0 having beat the Dolphins, right? Like there's an alternate world where that's the case. This juggernaut Dolphins team that hung 70 on the Broncos, there's a chance that the Chargers had a chance to beat them in week 1. And it's one of those things that every year we're running into this. Justin Herbert played great today, and yet they were struggling to beat the Vikings. And so it just on and on and on. I guess the question moving forward from a fantasy perspective, if this injury is what we think this injury is, and if he's out for the season, the question moving forward from a fantasy perspective is who are we targeting of the wide receivers? I think it's a bit of an interesting thing. I mean, when Mike Williams left, it was Josh Palmer that really got the bump in targets, and Josh Palmer had been playing ahead of Quentin Johnston. And I think if you look at Quentin Johnston, you would think that, all right, he's going to be more of that outside receiver, down the field receiver. But as Ryan McChrystal keeps bringing up about him, is at least at this point in his development, that is not who he is. He is more of around the line of scrimmage. They've been using him on screens, get him after the catch. He's dynamic after the catch. His average depth of target right now is 7.13. And so I don't even know if Johnston fits well into that Mike Williams role and how they're using Mike Williams. Although, to be fair, they've been using Mike Williams a lot more around the field this year than they had been. So it's going to be interesting to see. How are you kind of prioritizing just off, we're right after the injury, just early thoughts. How are you prioritizing?
My early thoughts are I'm not prioritizing. I don't have high hopes for Josh Palmer. He is what he is. I don't think he's more than a third wide receiver on any team. He struggled to catch a couple balls today. I think he even might have fumbled one into someone's hands at one point in time. And then Quentin Johnston is not the guy that he was drafted to be. So if the Chargers make some sort of run, I feel that the receiver to target is not on that team right now. They need someone with some speed to open things up a bit. And if they don't add that guy, the Chargers receiver to own is Keenan Allen. What do you get? 18 targets today? Something crazy like that. That it's just going to be the Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler show once he gets back. And they even had to involve Gerald Everett even more today. I don't have a lot of hope for those two receivers, and we'll see what happens. You need a guy like Will Fuller or someone to open things up for Justin Herbert. Come on,
Did
Will
Will
Fuller.
Fuller ever officially? Did he ever officially retire? I don't think I ever remember reading a Roto World blurb about him officially
Oh.
retiring. Do you?
My best ball teams from last year are unaware. I think they think he retired, but
maybe
but
maybe he did. To your point about Gerald Everett is interesting because we did see last year when they were having their receiver problems that Everett, had a pretty high target share,
mhm.
but it was very like 6, 7, 8 catches at 8 yards at a time kind of catches. And so it wasn't exciting, but in the tight end landscape that we have currently, especially in PPR leagues, that might be interesting. And to your
we
point, he finished with 6 catches for 30 yards today. So
yeah, we
that
need
that could be
Tucker
something.
to tell us where
But
Jalen Guyton is. I know he is on the IR, but I think he is coming back from an injury. Like that's almost the guy to own at some point in time because he's the deeper threat receiver that can hit some big plays. But I think he's still recovering from an injury. But I'll have to look into that more seriously over these next 2 days.
the other thing about it is, and Rich Rebar's brought this point up before, we were really hoping for the Justin Herbert down the field experience,
Yeah.
and we got it last week. And we saw some of it this week as well. The Josh Palmer touchdown that probably shouldn't have been, but it worked out for them. There's a little bit of Chargers luck for you. So there you go. That we saw it more, but when Austin Eckler comes back, and the reports on Sunday morning that he could come back next week, then Keenan Allen's his primary target, and he's maybe throwing more to Gerald Everett. Are we going to get back to the Justin Herbert that we saw last year, where most of it's around the line of scrimmage? They're hoping to create after catch. I don't know. What I will say is that Keenan Allen can set records this year if he stays healthy. Please, Keenan Allen, stay
Yes,
healthy.
please,
He
Keenan
is
Allen, please stay healthy.
he is wide open over and over and over and over again, like he has been all season. It's been really incredible to watch, and I'm liking the way that Kellen Moore is using Keenan Allen. I'm really excited of kind of what we've seen from that. Another injury. This one seems like, based on early reporting, is not as severe, and that is Derek Carr, shoulder injury. He got thrown down to the turf. It looked bad. They did X-rays. It kind of looked like it could have been, something that results in a broken collarbone. It wasn't. Apparently, he's dealing with an AC sprain. With that, you would assume he's going to miss a week, maybe 2. We'll see kind of what he can do, but that at least is not a season-ending injury. But I do think that we're probably going to see some Jameis Winston starts moving forward.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. I think everyone's excited to see Jameis kind of under with these kind of weapons. We haven't really seen him with weapons since Mike Evans and the 30 for 30 season. So I'm excited to see him with Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave and Mike Thomas, and Kamara comes back. Could be a fun offense to watch, and he's probably worth picking up in a few leagues if they let him cook a little bit and let him throw the ball a little bit dangerously. So I think it's more fun. I think he's a more fun quarterback to watch than Derek Carr. Derek Carr has actually played reasonably well until he gets to the red zone this year, but I think
Story
everyone's
of his
going to be
life.
excited to see a
Yep.
couple games of that.
Yeah, and I think that there's going to be more mistakes, right? Because Jameis throws interceptions. Even last year, he threw I think more interceptions than he did touchdown passes. That's going to happen. But you're right; it could be more interesting. Maybe we get to see a little bit more of Rashid Shaheed involved, which that would be exciting from a both
Yeah.
fantasy and real life perspective. We saw what he could do with the ball in his hands on special teams against the Packers, and so we are really excited to see more of Shaheed. And so maybe that fits a little bit better. A few other injuries. There really weren't a ton. A few other little ones to go through. Gus Edwards, it seems like he suffered a concussion. Well, we'll have to watch that. The thing with concussions is, it is what it is. We'll just have to watch and kind of see how he works through the protocol. Melvin Gordon, Kenyon Drake are next up. I think Justice Hill. I don't know if he's going to be back this week. We're talking about Chargers receivers. How about Ravens running backs?
The whole
Can
Ravens,
anybody stay
the
healthy?
Baltimore Ravens in general, man, like
It was wild.
they have no
Yeah.
cornerbacks anymore either. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
they ended up losing, and I don't even know if we put this in the rundown. I don't think we did. We could talk about it here. They end up losing to the Colts in overtime, and Justin Tucker actually had a chance to win, I believe, at the end of regulation. It came up short. It was a long field goal though, and I their offense was able to move the ball reasonably well throughout the day, and even though the weather was bad. But the defense is just it's beat up. It's they have so many injuries that it's tough for them, and then they end up ultimately losing that game in overtime. And so they get the Browns this week. I'm pretty sure they need to get healthier. They need to get healthier along the offensive line, and they need to because that defensive front for the Browns is going to be a much tougher test than the Colts. And yeah, that secondary needs to get healthier as well. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of them moving forward. One more, Jonathan Mingo, he left with a concussion, which was, we saw Adam Thielen and DJ Chark actually make some noise with Andy Dalton. Mingo had a lot of targets before he left. It would have been interesting to see kind of what he was able to do against that Seahawks secondary that also has nobody healthy. There's a theme running through this show with all of these teams. And the last one, you brought this one up. I actually hadn't seen this, but Rashad Bateman was limping at the end of that game. And
Yeah,
I looked into it. It seems like he says he tweaked his hamstring. He said he did not think it was serious, but given Bateman's injury history, I mean,
he
we're worried anytime anything
he
like this
hasn't
comes up.
played more than 50% of the snaps in a single game. He's obviously still dealing with Liz Frank injury, and they're bringing him along slowly, and this just adds to it, and it's concerning for a guy like him.
And it's concerning for the receiver core. I mean, we'll see when Odell gets back. Aguilar didn't really pop today. We saw Zay Flowers, get some usage, but where he's getting usage, he hasn't been creating those big plays at least
Right.
over the last couple games. So yeah, they need some help. They need Bateman healthy. They need Odell back. They need some help for sure. We kind of buried the lead here on the show because you are a Cowboys fan. We had to talk about the Cowboys losing to the Cardinals at the top. But the story of today, bar none, is the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins put up 70 against the Denver Broncos, 70-20, right? That was the final score. They had a chance to set the record at the end of the game, and I believe they ended up kneeling it out instead of attempting the field goal. Um, this offense, they didn't really stomp down the Patriots last week. And so, they came into this game. I had great expectations for them, but I didn't know if they'd press the gas. Devin A-Chain comes out and shows why he was drafted where he was drafted, why he was considered the way he was considered. He is fast. He makes plays. They got him the ball. He scored a bunch of touchdowns, or Mostert scored a bunch of touchdowns. This Denver defense looks atrocious. It looks like a travesty. This Denver team looks awful. I'm not sure who Sean Payton is going to blame for this one, but it was an absolute beat down. The Dolphins are real, and we have a real fun matchup on deck next week between them and the Bills.
Yeah, they scored 70 points without Jalen Waddle in their lineup. Can you believe that? That's
Wild.
crazy. Do you think the
It,
Broncos, if they could go back 2 years in time, they'd interview Mike McDaniel for a job over Nathaniel Hackett? Might have been a slight oversight on their part, but
or how about just keeping the defensive coordinator that had this almost the same defense? It did lose some talent. Draymond Jones isn't there anymore. Had almost this same defense, playing really well last year, and you could have probably kept him, but now he's in Carolina, right?
yeah.
And your
They
defense
just
is
throw the
getting
ball
destroyed.
away from Pat Surtain. So it's wherever Surtain is, you just know the ball isn't going. And at some point, you'd think they would be able to figure that out. But yeah, the speed of that Dolphins offense is so fun to watch because every play, Mostert, A-Chain, Waddle, Hill, they're all tracksters. Like they just go. So could be one
I
of the
would love.
funnest
I
offenses.
Mostert said, I believe I heard this on Sunday night last week. Mostert said they haven't raced yet because every one of them thinks that they're the fastest one. So that's a fun story. And I could say that I've never thought that I was the fastest one, so I have no idea what that feels like. I'm very accustomed to being at the back of the pack, so I can't imagine what it feels like to run like that. What I'll say about the Dolphins is I had them sixth, I think, in the power rankings last week, and I hadn't been moving them ahead of the Bills and Chiefs and I wanted to keep the NFC teams at the top because the NFC teams had just been better. And they kind of, I don't know, they didn't put away the Patriots the way I expected them to, and I was just kind of giving the Bills the benefit of the doubt. That benefit of the doubt is gone. This Dolphins team, as long as Tua stays healthy, it's going to be tough. They're going to be tough for any team to beat. I mean, we're talking about the Dolphins. The Bills did walk into Washington, a previously 2-0 Washington team, who beat those Broncos last week and absolutely just destroyed them, destroyed Sam Howell. And so, the Bills had a pretty good showing this week as well. But I can promise you the Dolphins will be above the Bills and higher in my power rankings this week after this performance. I just it was amazing. Just a really amazing offensive show.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. I think they're going to set some records this year and put up a lot of points. And the defense is holding its own. They look fine, so it'll be kind of interesting to see how the defense progresses under a new coordinator as the season goes on. If they get really good, like they could be the number one team. Who's going to beat them?
Yeah, absolutely. They're in the conversation already.
Yeah.
And then they're going to get Jalen Ramsey back at some point, it seems like. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. I hit on that game with the Bills. I talked on a couple podcasts last week about, what Sam Howell did in the second half against Denver. It was actually pretty good. It wasn't bad. Do they have something here in Sam Howell? No, they do not. They do not have something here in Sam Howell.
He is not he.
He had an awful game. And I mean, he's young quarterback and he was going up against what we think is a good defense. So I'm not going to write him off of one game, just like I wasn't going to crown him after last week. But yeah, it was rough. 19 of 29, 170 yards, 4 interceptions. One of them, the last one, was just like he threw it straight to AJ Epinesa. Like he was standing in his face, and it was just it was not it was not good. It was not a good showing by Sam Howell. But I mean, we also kind of think now, like after watching this Washington team, they got 2-0, they beat the Cardinals, they beat that Broncos team. I think this pretty much tells us that we were right maybe to not take that 2-0 start seriously.
Their schedule is so brutal down the stretch too, so it just doesn't get any easier for them either. So that's kind of one thing that had always had me have reservations about the Commanders.
My favorite thing on this, we've only done this, only our third one of these Sunday shows. And my favorite thing already, the early leader in the clubhouse, is you putting something in the show doc that I have no idea what it means. So I'm just going to read it out and I'm going to let you go. Ben Johnson to Sean Payton. Good things comes to those who wait. I don't even know what that means. What does that mean, Curtis?
I just wondering if Sean Payton's regretting coming back a year early. I don't really know if he had to push to get to Denver. I don't think that was his ideal choice. And you look at a guy like Ben Johnson, who didn't see an opportunity that he really wanted to take. I'm sure he would have had many offers if he went and checked out the head coaching market, and he stayed put with a team where he was comfortable with. And he's going to end up on a situation with Caleb Williams, I'm assuming, at the end of this year. And I think by waiting that extra year, good things come to those who wait. And I wonder what Sean Payton is feeling like today.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you can't blame Russ for this one, right? Like
No.
I don't know who he's going to blame. I don't know who he's going to throw under the bus here, but it's not working, and they're 0-3, right? And they are in a division that still looks tough. And so, I mean, we'll see what the Raiders are able to do on Sunday night. We record this before the Sunday night game. But yeah, it's been bad. One of kind of my biggest takeaways from, there's the big stories, right? There's the Dolphins and there's the Cowboys. One of my biggest kind of takeaways was a game that I tried not to watch much of, but I did see a fair amount of it, and that was the Jets and the Patriots. And the Jets just simply have to try something else. This is the point. The Jets have to try something else. And I don't know what is out there. I know you put some names in there. Are they going to trade for somebody? Kirk and Kyler, right? I mean, that's not happening in season. Is there anybody can they try to get Matt Ryan out of the booth to come back and be their quarterback? Go ahead.
Are you kidding me? Kirk Cousins is 0-3. They don't. He's not signing in Viking land next year. You could do worse. I don't know how the salary cap situation works, how they fit that in, but Kirk Cousins has to be within the last couple games of his Vikings career.
I don't think the Vikings. I mean, they are 0-3. They've been competitive in every game. They're just kind of on the wrong side of that one score variance that they were on the right side of so much last year. So I don't know. I mean,
told us they were rebuilding. I think I think they knew that
It,
last year was an anomaly, and they rode the variance wave. So it'll be interesting to see how, because if they lose a couple more, they
it
need
will
a
be
quarterback.
interesting. Yeah, they will be interesting to see that. But I mean, then they signed Marcus Davenport and they just traded for Cam Akers. So yeah, I don't really know where they are, but it is an interesting name. But like, even if it's not that, even if they're not trading for somebody, maybe Jameis could have been an option to trade for before Derek Carr gets hurt. But yeah, if they're not trading for somebody, I don't know, go find anybody else. They have to try something else. And not because I think that other person is going to be better necessarily. It would be hard to be worse. Over 35 qualified quarterbacks since the start of last season. Zach Wilson is 34th in EPA per dropback, 34th in success rate, 34th in off target rate, 34th in interception rate, and 31st in sack rate. And those numbers don't really look better this year. His accuracy has actually been better, but the rest of it is the same. And I think that if you keep riding Zach Wilson out there, you keep putting Zach Wilson out there. Robert Saleh said after the game again that Zach Wilson's going out there. To me, it seems like you're at risk of losing a locker room that A, expected to win this year, and B, is pretty talented. And you're throwing out a person like, I think Garrett Wilson kind of got a little bit upset on the sidelines already. Like I think he did today. It's going to be a bad situation if they're just going to keep rolling Zach Wilson out there. I don't have a solution, because there might not be one. But I mean, Tim Boyle, like their backup, put something else out there, try something, show that you're trying to do something. Because Zach Wilson, it's not the answer. He's just not it.
It doesn't matter what they do differently. You just have to do something differently, just for the sake of doing it at this point, just to give that locker room, okay, a little bit of hope. But it could be like Tim Boyle. Like, who really cares what it is? You just can't keep marching that guy out. You can't keep marching Zach Wilson out there. He's not the answer. We have seen this. Repeating the same mistake over and over and over. That's not the right answer. It's not happening.
Yeah, and as the samples go on Wilson, I mean, as NFL samples go, at least we're reaching the point where we know exactly who he is. So something has to change. Another team that something has to change on is the Bears, who just got absolutely walked all over. The defense, we talked about it last week. The defense is still awful. The offense is not working, even though they brought in DJ Moore. We saw Justin Fields this week seem to call out the coaching staff. He walked it back in the locker room a couple hours later, but they asked him, why is he thinking too much? And he basically said the coaching staff. And so it's bad. Like, it's really bad. This has the makings, now that Brandon Staley, got a win under his belt, this has the makings of a situation that's going south very quickly. And I don't know where this is fixed. And the fact that your quarterback, who they're not even sure they're going to commit to, the fact that their quarterback's already throwing the coaching staff under the bus a little bit. Again, he said he wasn't, but that's what it sounded like. It's rough, man. It's rough.
Yeah, what a few weeks they've had. Their equipment for cutting the field got stolen. Their DC went missing, and the defense doesn't even know the story. Like, what is going on with this?
Well, we got some
They,
good news on that front. We got some good news on that front on Sunday morning. I believe Adam Schefter reported that what he did was not illegal. It was just inappropriate and had to involve HR. So,
oh,
great.
great, yeah. Like,
Wonderful.
everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, and yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple weeks ahead for them, because they've got some decisions to make for a team that had hopes to turn the corner this year. Their defense is still not very good. Their offense, did they complete 3 passes in the first half and had 4 first downs? Okay, yeah, whatever you guys are doing, it's not working. The DJ Moore and Justin Fields comparisons aren't like the other quarterbacks that got a good receiver that just magically got better.
If you're Matt Eberflus, like, I guess if it was just the offense, you go, well, maybe I change the offensive coordinator. But his defense is also just a disaster as well. And so that's what has me thinking that this could be headed to one of those. I like to talk about first coach fired. I find it very interesting. This feels like it could be headed to a little bit of first coach fired land. Although he hasn't been there for this, only his 3rd season, right? Am I right about that? Or is it
Second, I
second
think.
season?
Second, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that helps. But yeah, it's not going well. One of those coaches we talked about in that first coach fired last week, they ended up winning. The Chargers ended up winning, so all's well that ends well. But he had a decision at the end of that game that I actually don't think was a terrible decision, and I can talk about why in a bit. But he decided to go for it on 4th and 1 from deep inside his own territory. They did not get it, and the Vikings had a chance to win the game at the end. They couldn't do it because the Vikings, again, are just on the wrong side of that one score. But that is such a, you could say gutsy, you could take the positive side and say gutsy decision for a coach with the 4th down history of Brandon Staley and on the hot seat like Brandon Staley was. And aside from whether he should have done that or not, because I actually think there are arguments why you would do that. Like, I can't believe he did that. Can you believe that he did that in that kind of situation?
After punting from the Titans' 43-yard line last week, giving the context of this situation, I can't believe he did it. But you're right. It was the right play. And any of the math nerds will tell you that he made the right decision. You just got to execute a 1-yard play. And at some point in time, we have to question, how come these teams can't get a 4th-and-1 conversion when the Eagles do it every single time? Like, what is wrong with some of these teams that just copy what they're doing and make the 4th-and-1 play a 99% play?
Well, I saw a lot on Twitter of people criticizing even the idea of it, which I assume some people listening would agree that maybe it wasn't a good decision. Here's kind of the argument, at least in my mind. You're up by 4. A field goal does not beat you. They still have to go and get a touchdown, which that is the hard thing to do, especially when you're down and they're close. If you get a first down, that's game over. It wins it for you. So you're keeping it in your hands. If you get a first down, you win. If you don't, it's not like they automatically are going to tie you. They still have to go and get a touchdown as well. And so I think that that's the argument for why you do it there. But again, if you're Brandon Staley and you're on the hot seat the way that he's on the hot seat, and you have the 4th-down history that he has, when you think back to early in his tenure with the Chargers and all of the flack he got for the, again, correct 4th-down decisions he was making, but they couldn't get that yard, then, it becomes tougher. But to your point, it's all well and good if the math says go for 4th down. The problem is if you don't have a play to do it. We saw this in college yesterday with Ohio State, right? Like, this is, if you don't have the play to go and do it, then it's just, it's not going to work. And so it is. And again, Eckler was getting stuffed all day. Not Eckler, excuse me. Kelly was getting stuffed all day. And don't ever let me, by the way, Curtis, if I ever bring up that I want to play Josh Kelly again, don't ever let me do that. Please just slap me in the face and don't let me play Josh Kelly again. But he was getting stuffed all day, and you're going to run him straight up the middle. I know he was lined up at fullback. You got to have a better play. And I think that's really the key to this decision. I don't think it was a bad decision, but what they did, just especially given what had happened throughout the rest of the game, it did not have a high likelihood.
Yeah, his 1.1 yard per rush average wasn't cutting it today. But yeah, if Jefferson doesn't get banged up on that last drive there, I don't know if Staley's driving to the office tomorrow morning. I think if they score a touchdown there, I think that's it. Like, we'd heard rumors that they've already been in contact with Harbaugh in Michigan. The ownership is looking to move on at some point, and if he blows that game with that 4th down, because there's been so much speculation around his 4th down decision making, if they lose that game, I don't think he's coaching. They might just let Kellen Moore take over for the interim being, and so it's a pretty wild situation.
I agree with you 100%. Like, that might have been a decision for his job, and it worked out for him. And you mentioned Jefferson got banged up. He just had cramps, but yeah, you're right. He missed a couple plays, and maybe it gets a little bit different there. And I feel like we're being really negative today, and I feel like I don't like to be this negative, but there was so many. We've reached week 3, and you could start drawing conclusions. I said start twice there, but that's fine. You can begin to start really drawing conclusions about these teams. And I mean, I know that he let a comeback last week in the second half. He made some plays with his legs in the second half against the Packers, and that's looking like a good win. I mean, the Packers were able to beat the Saints, even again without Christian Watson, without Aaron Jones. The Packers, I bet them before the season to win the division, and they're definitely in the mix for that, it seems like, and are only going to get healthier. But this game for Desmond Ridder was awful against the defense that you would expect them to be able to play well against. So, I mean, is he is Desmond Ritter? He's just not it, right? Like, do they have to start Taylor Heineke? Because this team, the defense played pretty well, right? Against the Lions, the defense wasn't
Yeah, they
terrible.
did. And
We
yeah,
know
yet again, is Desmond Ritter it? No, probably not. Is Art Smith it? No, probably not. So is this like a who's the bigger problem? Is it Ritter? Is it Smith? Like, he's winning games, but he's playing this awful style of football that you can't win games against better teams. Like we had mentioned this last week, you come to this and you need your quarterback to step up, and he just doesn't have that ability. So he doesn't have that ability. You haven't trusted him to do it in the past, so now he's in this foreign situation and just threw up all over himself. He looks terrible. He looks like he has no confidence, and they're not getting their playmakers the ball, and they lose. And it was a weird game. I don't know if I like the Jahmyr Gibbs 17 rushes compared to 2 targets. Get the dude out in space. I was a little intrigued by that side of the ball as well. I don't think Jahmyr Gibbs is the between the tackle runner. Get him out. Get 9. What did he have? 9 targets last week. Get him the targets, especially when Amon-Ra is banged up with his foot. So I thought it was a weird game on both sides, but the Lions defense has played a couple good games, one really bad game. So intrigued to keep watching them as well moving forward.
the Lions really like condensed their target tree today, which was interesting because we had seen Josh Reynolds be more involved. And then, they really condensed it. 12 targets for Amon-Ra St. Brown and 11 for Sam Laporta, and then just 8 other targets. And
Right?
so they really condensed the tree here. And that was, that's fascinating. I do think I'd like to see the pace numbers for this. I was watching Ritter, and I'd see Ritter come up on the TV, and I was watching him, but I wasn't like, this wasn't the game I was paying the most attention to. So I'm very interested in kind of what the Lions did from a pace perspective. I wonder if they tried to play the Arthur Smith game, which why even do that against the Falcons doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, it was an interesting development. They had, what was that? Oh, they only had 21 carries, so it was more. No, 31. I can't read. I'm getting old. My eyes are getting bad. So 31 carries, and so yeah, I don't know about all that, but it'll be going forward. It'll be interesting to see. You wrote in here, this is a direct attack on me, Curtis, about Jerome Ford. A direct attack on me. You said it's Jerome Ford's season. Some call it luck. That's me. I call it luck that you lucked into 2 touchdowns. One where you were wide open in the end zone, and the other one wasn't even created for you. And you luck into 2 touchdowns against the Titans. You shouldn't be playing running backs against the Titans. And if you played Jerome Ford against the Titans, you lucked into 2 touchdowns. Congratulations. He had 10 carries for 10 yards, 10 carries for 18 yards. That's how upset I am about it because I can't even get it out. But you think it's Jerome Ford's season. I will say, him continuing to get that many touches, getting involved in passing game, that's good. Pierre Strong had 6 carries. Kareem Hunt had 5 carries. There's a
He,
lot of
the first target of the
there.
game went right through his hands and almost it went right as an interception, and I thought that was a bad omen. But yeah, I didn't play Jerome Ford in DFS because I'm not that guy. I'm not but I was forced to start him in way too many teams in redraft because the entire league is injured and you don't really have any other options. So I'm on the smiling side of him finding the end zone twice and making it not a 4-point week. But yeah, I'm excited for Jerome Ford because I have way too much of him on my redraft teams. But yeah, I'll take the good side of variance and 2 touchdowns on 10 touches today.
I just start Craig Reynolds in a league, and yeah, the fact that they ran Gibbs 17 times did not make me feel great. It was also just a wild week from like a DFS perspective. I generally play around 10 lineups. That's kind of the way I like to do it. 10 lineups, play a lot of single entry, very small field, and I had 3 of my lineups go over 180 at DraftKings, and I did not even make my money back.
That's crazy.
That's the kind of
you did not have Raheem
yeah.
Mostert.
I did actually. Those are the 3 that I had, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough, unfortunately, with those. So yeah, it was a really wild week. And the last thing we have here on the list is just the Jaguars. You have here broken cat season. We'll see what the Bengals are able to do on Monday night. But the Jaguars, They lose to the Texans. We talked last week about the Texans and how CJ Stroud, especially given the circumstances that he was under with the offensive line he was playing behind, CJ Stroud had looked pretty good. Well, it came together for the Texans this week. They beat the Jaguars 37-17, and the Jaguars offense just, isn't working. And again, they got a pretty good game out of Etienne, just like the Cowboys got a good game out of Pollard. They got a pretty good game out of Etienne, and it didn't matter. They scored 17 points last week against the Chiefs. The Chiefs have a good defense, so it is what it is. Score 17 points this week against the Texans. Both of those games are at home. They have to figure out kind of what's going on with this offense, because I mean, they're probably still the favorites for the division, even though they're 1-2.
Oh, they have to
But
be, but
the Colts beat the Ravens. The Texans beat them. The Titans are apparently on a one bad week, one good week kind of plan. So maybe they'll finish out. I don't know how that works out numbers wise, if they can finish out 9-8 with that. But yeah, they have to get this offense turned around. Falcons coming to town, then the Bills. I mean, they need to figure this offense out, and I'm not really sure what the answer is.
yeah, even Calvin Ridley didn't look like he was getting open. He dropped a pass in the end zone that was actually a really good pass early in the game. He did get banged up a little bit. Looked like he might have sprained his knee early on, and I think he kind of lost a little bit of his juice after that because he wasn't getting targeted. He wasn't getting open, I don't think. And yeah, I don't know what you do. Their offensive line was always a concern, but it was a concern last year, and they managed to find a way around it. And this year, the passing game just isn't working. They probably ran the ball more than they would have liked, even when they were trailing. The one drive where they got a touchdown, they just gave it to ETN the whole time. It was like run, 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 and I think they eventually tossed it in the end zone. Or no, Bigsby came and installed the touchdown.
Tank Bigsby, the Jerome Ford of the South. Tank Bigsby came in and
ETN gets 80 of the 100 yards, and then bring Bigsby in at the one. That's exactly what happened. But yeah, the passing game, it's concerning, and I think at the beginning of the year we would have considered the Jaguars and the Bengals both top 5 or 6 passing offenses, and with pretty good players, elite quarterbacks, and one good receiver and a couple good options, and they're struggling. So we'll talk about the Bengals later here, but yeah, the Jaguars, the Cats are broken, and the Panthers offense got a little better with Andy Dalton, so they're okay.
It is funny. Andy Dalton came in, and the offense did work a little bit better. We actually had, I tweeted something about it on Saturday night that I felt like a massive degenerate because I was considering playing Andy Dalton in DFS because I felt like it might be a good environment. Seattle's defense isn't good.
That's what I said. I fully back that idea. I just couldn't figure. I didn't want to play Thielen, and I wanted to go to Mingo, but man, who did you play as a pass catcher? So I didn't ever get there. But
I played Mingo and Chark with Geno, though. I couldn't bring myself. I couldn't bring myself to put Andy Dalton into a DFS lineup in the year of our Lord 2023. I could not bring myself to do it. But yeah, no, the Bengals are going to be fascinating. It seems like, and again, we're recording this on a Sunday. It seems like Joe Burrow is going to try to play this week. I'm not sure why. I know why, because they're 0-2, but I'm not sure if that's maybe the best idea given kind of where they are. They're off their passing game. Like you said, it's not working. At least they have the injury concern with it. But yeah, we're in this situation where these offenses that we expected to be good. The Jaguars, we expected their offense to be good, and we expected their defense to struggle. And we thought that would lead to some pretty good fantasy performances for the passing game. It kind of worked out in week 1 against the Colts, who you can throw against, but it hasn't worked out since. And we're reaching this point. We're getting close to week 4 here, where you have to start changing the way you think about these teams, especially in places you can make changes. If you're in a league without drops, not in best ball, or if you're in DFS, you have to start to make these changes about kind of how you're viewing these teams moving forward. And I think that I'm going to need to see it from the Jaguars before I go stacking any of their games moving forward. And that was not something I expected early in the season.
No, that's exactly it. ETN is getting he's the Josh Jacobs of this year, who we'd written off of not being able to get the full workload, but he's getting the full workload. He just isn't getting the touchdowns to go with it. He had a very productive day number wise today. But even last week, he had all the carries basically, and he's just not getting the touchdowns Josh Jacobs did. So he's the guy that I keep going back to just until they sneak Tank Bigsby in at the one. But
Absolutely
I
rooting.
can't trust Lawrence right now, and Ridley they're not producing. So
And we saw Kirk. I mean, Kirk got a touchdown today, and I kind of had written that if he had a good game against the Chiefs, which he did, at least from a PPR perspective, that would be a good sell high point. I'm still on that because
yeah.
he caught a touchdown today, but Zay Jones wasn't there. When Zay Jones comes back, Christian Kirk is, I would assume, going to go back into being that third wide receiver. And if they're not playing enough 11, that he's not going to get as many targets as you want. And now the passing game doesn't work real well. I don't really think you want that. So I'm still looking at Kirk as a sell high if he's somebody that you can
I
get.
totally
Anybody
agree
else
with
on the
that
waiver?
take.
Yeah, anybody else on the waiver wire? We talked about Palmer and Quentin Johnson. There weren't a ton of injuries. Jameis Winston as well. Anybody else that you're really kind of,
Yeah, it's
you'll
going to
have
be
his.
interesting in some of the home leagues. I think these injuries to the running backs are the Chargers going to go back to Joshua Kelly today. They actually had Spiller in there over Dotson on some of the carries. Matt Breida will have a little bit better of a matchup next week, and the Giants, I think they'll have a functional offense when Daniel Jones isn't under duress every pass. So just kind of monitoring those situations. I don't think there's anything crazy new coming out. And yeah, just taking a look at trying now is kind of when you're right, where we evaluate these offenses and see which pieces we want in which offenses. Because some of these offenses, like the Bears, doesn't matter if Chase Claypool's on the field every single snap. I mean, we don't want to piece any of those offenses. So it's trying to find, like, we do want the Chargers offense. We're going to want whatever receivers they trot out there. But man, I don't think Quentin Johnson and Josh Palmer are those guys. Maybe they go for an upgrade at some point in time.
Yeah, I would like to get excited about Roshan Johnson, but why? If the Bears offense just
Yeah.
doesn't work, right? So what's the point of that? By the way, you can find every waiver pickup that Curtis loves this week in the waiver column available at sharpfootballanalysis.com. It's part of our in-season fantasy package. It's part of our all access package. Head over to sharpfootballanalysis.com and you can find his thoughts on all of the waiver pickups this week. How about moving forward? What are you watching this week? What's interests you as we move here into week 4 of the season?
Yeah, I'm excited for tomorrow night's Bengals Rams game. We have this Bengals or the Rams who I saw something on Twitter yesterday or X about Matthew Stafford being the guy that threw to Calvin Johnson and setting a record with Cooper Kupp and now Puka. Maybe we've just really underrated Matthew Stafford all these years. The guy is balling this year. He still doesn't have an offensive line in front of him, and he's facing a pretty good Bengals defense and a really good coordinator. I'm excited to see what they have, and like I mentioned the Bengals earlier. What's going to come of this situation? Is Burrow going to trot out there? Is he going to put himself at risk with Aaron Donald on the other side of the line and Jamar Chase has been calling for some deeper shots? Well, that opens up your quarterback to get crushed, who's immobile as it is. So I'm excited to see that game because you've got two teams that are going the exact opposite how we predicted at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, Stafford wasn't healthy last year. He was healthy the year before they won the Super Bowl. He's been healthy through 2 games this year, and he's just been dealing, absolutely dealing. And you're right, he was underrated during his time in Detroit just because of the ineptitude of that franchise. And so, we probably didn't view him in the way that we should have viewed him as a former number 1 overall pick who definitely put up the stats. Now he has a Super Bowl, and now he's absolutely dealing to Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua. So he should just put that on a resume, by the way. That should
Dude,
be,
he's a Hall of Famer. I would have never guessed this before, but yeah, he's earned my respect. And despite him not being able to communicate with any of his new wide receivers, with that crazy story coming out at the beginning of the year, like who would have ever predicted this?
Yeah, I wouldn't. Like, we were actually talking, Ryan and I were talking about some of the overs and unders that we had taken in August, and one of them was Tyler Higbee's over because we thought that, Cooper Kupp was already hurt and that there were no other receivers. So Higbee was going to get a big target share. So we took the over on him. And we were incorrect about that assumption. I don't believe that over for Higbee is hitting. Although, we'll see. We're only
I dropped him in a league this morning just because it's like this. A, he's not very good. And B, I only have him on my team because he was going to get targets, and he does nothing with those targets. He's like the Zach Ertz, but
he's not getting the targets.
He just
exactly. He's not even getting the
catch
targets.
and fall.
So.
Yeah,
exactly.
I sent him packing this morning.
Yeah, sad for my over bet, but we'll see how it goes. What I'm watching for this week, I just really think this is going to be a fun week of what's real games. We have on Thursday night, we have the Lions at the Packers. That'll be an interesting game to kind of see where that division may be headed this year. Obviously, still early, but that'll be an interesting game. I've already mentioned this one: Dolphins at Bills, Week 4, huge. That's a massive game. These two teams, I mean, the Bills have bounced back. Like I said, they absolutely destroyed the Commanders today. We know what the Dolphins did today. That is a huge game. I'm so excited for it. And then the Ravens at the Browns. I mean, both teams have dealt with adversity. We'll see what the Bengals are able to do against the Rams on Monday night. Both teams seem to be in real. And by the way, the Steelers here in a few minutes when we're recording against the Raiders. Both teams seem to be in really good spots in the division. Both teams also have a lot of injury concerns, a lot of things going wrong. So that'll be a really fun game. So those games are really fascinating to me. And we'll kind of see where we are this time next week when we're back to recap Week 4. Make sure you stay tuned to our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, search Warren Sharp, and subscribe, and you'll get notified for all of our live broadcasts. Again, we go live here every Sunday at 7:30 to recap the games. Come and join us if you're listening to this on a podcast. Keep downloading the podcast. We really appreciate it. And we'll be back to talk to you soon.